They laughed. Now it's my turn.
They say finding out your wife is cheating is like getting punched in the gut by someone wearing brass knuckles. They're wrong. It's more like discovering you've been the punchline to a joke everyone's been telling behind your back for months. My name is Dave Grady, and I'm 38 years old. I used to fix cars until a hydraulic lift decided my back wasn't worth respecting anymore. Now I adjust insurance claims, which is basically telling people why their disasters aren't worth as much money as they think. It's fitting work for a guy whose life turned into a disaster nobody wants to pay for. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are supposed to be boring, forgettable days. Nothing earth-shattering should happen on a Tuesday. But there I was, looking for my phone charger in Carla's gym bag, when my fingers found something that definitely wasn't workout equipment. A second phone. A cheap burner with a pink case covered in little hearts. My wife Carla manages Murphy's Bar downtown. She's 36, still turns heads when she walks into a room, and has this laugh that used to make me feel like the funniest guy in the world. These days, that laugh sounds more like a cash register ringing up my stupidity. I held that phone like it might explode. The smart thing would have been to put it back, pretend I never found it, maybe talk to her like a mature adult. But curiosity ended the cat, and I was apparently volunteering to be the cat. The phone wasn't password protected. First red flag. Carla puts passwords on everything, including the microwave if Samsung would let her. But this phone opened right up, eager to spill its secrets. The text messages read like a bad romance novel written by someone with a gym membership and no imagination. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Same room as last week? Eddie, you make me feel alive again. Dave doesn't even notice when I'm gone. Your husband is such a loser. How did you end up with him? Don't worry about Dave. He's too stupid to figure anything out. Eddie Russo. I knew that name. Everyone in town knew Eddie Russo. He owned Russo's gym on 5th Street, drove a red Camaro with racing stripes, and had the kind of muscles that suggested he spent more time looking at himself in mirrors than most people spend sleeping. I scrolled through weeks of messages. Months, actually. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. There were photos, videos, details about their meetings that made my stomach turn inside out and tie itself in knots. The worst part wasn't the cheating. The worst part was how they talked about me. Like I was some pathetic joke they both had to endure. Like I was a broken appliance Carla was too lazy to throw away. Dave's working late again tonight. Loser can't even keep a real job. At least he pays the bills while we have our fun. Think he suspects anything? Dave? He couldn't find his own way around with both hands and a GPS. I sat on our bed, holding this phone full of my humiliation, and started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of laughter that happens when your brain can't process how completely screwed you are, so it just starts making noise. Carla was at work. She wouldn't be home for hours. I had time to think, to plan, to figure out what came next. The old Dave would have confronted her immediately, probably cried, maybe begged her to stop. But looking at those messages, seeing how little respect she had for me, something different started growing in my chest. Anger, sure. But also something colder, something that tasted like revenge. I took pictures of everything on that phone. Screenshots of messages, photos, videos, call logs. I documented it all with the thoroughness of a man who used to take apart engines and put them back together better than before. My friend Pete always said I was too nice for my own good. Pete's an ex-cop who works security now, drinks too much coffee, and has opinions about everything. He also warned me about Carla when we first started dating 8 years ago. She's trouble, Dave. Pretty trouble, but trouble all the same. I should have listened to Pete, but pretty trouble has a way of making smart men stupid, and I was apparently no exception. By the time Carla came home that night, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to be the crying, begging husband. I wasn't going to be the pathetic joke they laughed about between their motel room sessions. I was going to be something else entirely. "Hey, babe," Carla said, dropping her purse by the door. "How was your day?" She looked tired, but there was something else in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or just the exhaustion that comes from living a double life. "Interesting," I said, holding up the burner phone. "Found this in your gym bag." The color drained from her face like water from a broken sink. For a moment, she just stared at the phone, probably calculating how much trouble she was in and what lies might get her out of it. "Dave, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because I've been reading your explanations for the last 3 hours, and they're pretty detailed." She tried to grab the phone, but I pulled it back. Amazing how quick reflexes come back when you're motivated by pure fury. "That's not mine," she said, which might have been the stupidest lie in the history of stupid lies. Someone must have put it in my bag. Someone? Who? The cheating wife fairy? Don't be sarcastic, Dave. It doesn't suit you. You know what doesn't suit me, Carla? Being married to a woman who thinks I'm too stupid to notice when she's screwing the local musclehead. She changed tactics, went for tears. Dave, please, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. It's exactly what these messages say it is. It's exactly what these photos show it is. The tears stopped, just like that, like turning off a faucet. That's when I knew for certain that everything between us had been fake for longer than I wanted to admit. "So, what now?" she asked. "You going to divorce me? Take half of nothing?" "I'm going to think about it," I said, "while you figure out where you're sleeping tonight, because it's not here." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, but stopped with her hand on the knob. "You know what your problem is, Dave? You never fight for anything. You just accept whatever happens to you like some kind of victim. Maybe if you'd fought for me, for us, instead of feeling sorry for yourself all the time, I wouldn't have needed to find someone who made me feel wanted. And maybe if you'd been honest instead of sneaking around like a teenager, we could have worked things out. But we'll never know now, will we?" She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat in the quiet house, still holding that phone, and smiled for the first time in months. Not because I was happy, because I finally knew exactly who I was dealing with, and more importantly, I knew who I was going to become. The joke had been on me for months, but every good joke needs a punchline, and I was just getting started. Pete's coffee shop isn't actually owned by my friend Pete. It's owned by a Greek guy named Dimitri, who couldn't care less what people call his place, as long as they buy coffee and don't cause trouble. Pete just drinks enough coffee there to qualify for partial ownership, and Dimitri lets him use the back booth as his unofficial office. I found Pete there the next morning, reading yesterday's newspaper and working on his third cup of coffee since sunrise. Pete's got gray hair, suspicious eyes, and the kind of mustache that went out of style in 1985, but somehow works for him. "You look like heck," he said when I sat down across from him. "Thanks. You always know just what to say." "What happened?" I told him everything. The phone, the messages, Carla's reaction, the whole pathetic story. Pete listened without interrupting, which is unusual for him. Usually he's got opinions before you finish talking. "So what's your plan?" he asked when I finished. "That's what I'm here to figure out. You could divorce her, take her for whatever she's got, which is nothing. We don't own anything worth fighting over, and she'd probably get alimony since I make more than she does. You could beat up Eddie. And go to jail? No thanks." Pete stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "You know, there are other ways to handle this. Such as, well, Eddie's got a reputation to protect. Guy like that, his whole business depends on people thinking he's successful, desirable, alpha male nonsense. What happens if that reputation takes a hit? I'm listening. And Carla, she's got her little world at the bar, all her friends, her social circle, her image as the fun, attractive manager everyone likes. What happens if people start seeing her differently?" I was definitely listening now. "You're talking about revenge. I'm talking about consequences. There's a difference." Pete had a point. Carla and Eddie had consequences coming, and there was no law saying those consequences had to be delivered by the universe instead of by me. "First thing you need is more information," Pete said. "You've got the phone, but that's just the beginning. You need to know their patterns, their weaknesses, their pressure points." "How do I do that?" "Same way cops solve cases, you investigate." We spent the next hour planning my investigation. Pete knew things about surveillance and information gathering that I'd never thought about. By the time I left the coffee shop, I had a strategy. Step one was Eddie's gym. I'd never been there, but I had a pretty good excuse to check it out. Guy trying to get back in shape after a back injury, looking for a gym that understood his limitations. Perfectly reasonable. Russo's gym occupied a converted warehouse on 5th Street, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. The kind of place that looked tough and serious, designed to intimidate people into thinking their workouts were more hardcore than they actually were. Eddie was easy to spot. He was the guy with the perfect hair and the tank top that showed off arms the size of my legs. He was standing behind the front desk, talking to a blonde woman in yoga pants who was laughing at everything he said. "Can I help you?" he asked when I approached the desk. Up close, he was even more ridiculous. Fake tan, too much cologne, and teeth so white they probably glowed in the dark. "I'm looking for a gym," I said. "Heard good things about this place." "You heard right, Eddie Russo." He stuck out his hand for a shake that was probably designed to crush my fingers and establish dominance. "I've been shaking hands with mechanics and insurance adjusters for 20 years. I know how to handle a power play." "Dave?" I said, matching his grip. "Dave Grady." If he recognized the name, he didn't show it. Either he was a better actor than I expected, or Carla had never mentioned her husband's name during their romantic conversations. "What kind of workout are you looking for, Dave?" "Nothing too crazy. I've got a bad back, need to build up some core strength, maybe lose a few pounds." "We can definitely help with that. Rick." He called over a younger guy with arms like tree trunks and a face like a friendly golden retriever. "Show Dave around, get him set up with a tour." Rick was enthusiastic about everything. The weight machines were amazing. The cardio equipment was state-of-the-art. The locker room had towel service. The group fitness classes were incredible. By the time we finished the tour, I knew the layout of the entire building and had identified 3 different ways to get in and out without being seen. "So, what do you think?" Rick asked as we returned to the front desk. "Impressive," I said. "Let me think about it and get back to you." "No problem. Here's Eddie's card. He's usually here most evenings if you have questions." Most evenings. Interesting. I wondered how he managed to squeeze in his motel meetings with my wife. I spent the rest of the day driving around town, learning Eddie's routine. His red Camaro was easy to follow, and he wasn't particularly careful about being watched. He went from the gym to a sports bar for lunch, then to a tanning salon, then back to the gym. At 6 o'clock, he left the gym and drove to the Sunset Motel on Route 9, the same motel mentioned in those text messages. I parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Carla's Honda pulled into the parking lot. She parked 3 spaces away from Eddie's Camaro, looked around nervously, then knocked on the door of room 237. Eddie opened the door, wearing nothing but a towel. They kissed like teenagers, all hands and urgency, before disappearing inside. I sat in my car for 2 hours, taking pictures of their vehicles, the motel, the room number, building my case like Pete had taught me. When they finally came out, they looked satisfied and relaxed. Carla checked her hair in her car's side mirror before driving away. Eddie lit a cigarette and leaned against his car like he was posing for a magazine cover. That night, Carla came home acting like nothing had happened. "How was work?" I asked. "Busy. Tuesday nights are always crazy." She was a good liar. I had to give her that. If I hadn't seen her at the motel, I might have believed her. "I'm thinking about joining a gym," I said. "That's great, babe. Which one? Russo's gym, you know it?" She didn't even blink. "I think I've heard of it. Downtown somewhere?" "Fifth Street. The owner seems like a real character." "I'm sure you'll like it." She went to bed early, claiming she was tired from her busy day at work. I stayed up late, planning phase 2 of my investigation. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Murphy's bar. It was closed, but I could see Carla's car in the parking lot. She was probably doing inventory or paperwork, the boring parts of managing a bar that happened during daylight hours. I parked down the street and waited. Around noon, she came out with another woman I recognized from the text messages. Jessie, Carla's best friend, and apparently her confidant in all things adultery-related. They got in Jessie's car and drove to a restaurant across town. I followed at a distance, parked where I could see their table through the window and watched them have what looked like a very animated conversation. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could read body language. Jessie was excited about something, gesturing with her hands, leaning forward like she was sharing gossip. Carla was laughing, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen at home in months. They were probably talking about Eddie, about their secret affair, about how stupid and clueless I was. I took more pictures, Carla and Jessie at lunch, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. Evidence that my wife was living her best life while lying to my face every single day. By the time I got home that evening, I had enough information to confront them both. I could have called lawyers, filed for divorce, made everything official and legal and boring. Instead, I called Pete. "I'm ready for phase 2, I told him. "What's phase 2? "Making sure they know I'm not as stupid as they think I am." Pete was quiet for a moment. "Dave, are you sure about this? Once you start down this road, there's no going back." "They started down this road months ago. I'm just catching up." "All right then, let's talk strategy." We talked for 2 hours. By the time I hung up, I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The joke had been on me long enough. Time to start writing some new material. Thursday night, Eddie's routine was as predictable as a Swiss watch. Gym until 8, sports bar until 9:30, then home to his apartment above the pizza place on 3rd Street. The man was a creature of habit, which made him an easy target. I waited until he was settled at his usual table in Mickey's sports bar, surrounded by his usual crowd of admirers, before I made my move. The parking lot behind the bar was poorly lit, and mostly empty except for Eddie's precious red Camaro. I'd spent the afternoon at the hardware store buying supplies and remembering skills from my mechanic days. Nothing illegal, nothing that would cause permanent damage. Just a few modifications that would make Eddie's evening more interesting. The valve stems on his tires were easy to access. A few quick turns with needle-nose pliers, and his car would be sitting on 4 flats within an hour. Not slashed tires, which would be vandalism. Just loosened valve stems, which could happen to anyone with bad luck. The hood was unlocked, because Eddie was the kind of guy who thought his reputation was better security than actual security. I popped it open and got to work. A little sugar in the oil filler cap wouldn't hurt the engine, but it would make some interesting noises. Disconnecting the battery cable would prevent the car from starting until someone who knew what they were looking for could fix it. The piece de resistance was the message I spray painted across his windshield in bright red letters. Cheaters always get caught. Not subtle, but effective. I was back in my car across the street when Eddie came out of the bar an hour later. He was walking with that confident swagger that came from too many beers and too much praise from his drinking buddies. The swagger disappeared when he saw his car. What the heck? He walked around the Camaro like he was surveying a crime scene, taking in the flat tires, the message on the windshield, the hood that was slightly ajar. He pulled out his phone and started making calls, probably to a tow truck and the police. I drove home, parked in my garage, and waited for Carla to get back from work. She came through the door at 11:30, looking tired and distracted. "How was your day?" she asked, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. "Productive," I said. "How about yours?" "Same old stuff. Bar was slow tonight." "That's too bad. Hey, did you hear about any trouble downtown? Police cars, tow trucks, that kind of thing?" She shook her head. "No. Why?" "Just curious. Sometimes I pick up police chatter on my old radio." She went to bed without mentioning Eddie or any phone calls from worried lovers. Either she was a better actress than I thought, or Eddie hadn't told her about his car trouble yet. The next morning, I drove past Russo's gym on my way to work. Eddie's Camaro wasn't in the parking lot, and there was a handwritten sign on the door. "Closed for equipment maintenance, reopening Monday." Equipment maintenance, right. At lunch, I stopped by Pete's coffee shop to give him an update. "Sounds like your message was received," he said. "That was just the opening act. I want them to know someone's watching. Someone knows what they're doing." "What's next?" Carla's turn. Murphy's Bar had a reputation as the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and gossip traveled faster than spilled beer. Carla had built her social life around that bar, made herself the center of attention and conversation. She loved being the popular, attractive manager that all the regulars wanted to talk to. That popularity was about to become a liability. I spent Friday evening at Murphy's, nursing a beer in a corner booth and listening to conversations. Carla was working behind the bar, laughing with customers, playing her role as the fun, flirty bartender who made everyone feel special. Around 9 o'clock, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression changed. Worried, maybe a little scared. She stepped into the back room to take the call, Eddie probably telling her about his car trouble. When she came back, she was distracted, kept checking her phone, jumping every time it made a sound. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by nervous energy that her regular customers started to notice. "You okay, Carla?" asked Jim, a construction worker who'd been coming to Murphy's for 20 years. "Fine, just tired," she said, but her smile looked forced. I finished my beer and left, but not before I'd heard enough conversations to know that Murphy's Bar was the kind of place where secrets didn't stay secret for long. Saturday morning, I put phase 2 into motion. I'd created an anonymous email account and spent hours crafting the perfect message. Not threatening, not obviously, from a jealous husband, just concerned citizens sharing information about local business owners. The email went to the president of the Downtown Business Association, the editor of the local newspaper's lifestyle section, and the administrators of 3 different Facebook groups dedicated to local gossip and community news. The message was simple. "Thought you should know that Eddie Russo from Russo's Gym and Carla Grady from Murphy's Bar have been having an affair for months. They meet at the Sunset Motel every Tuesday and Thursday. Attached are photos and screenshots of their text messages. Some people think the community should know what kind of people are representing our local businesses. I attached selected screenshots from Carla's burner phone, carefully edited to remove anything that mentioned me by name, just enough evidence to prove the affair without revealing my identity as the source. Then, I sat back and waited for the internet to do what the internet does best: spread gossip at the speed of light. By Sunday afternoon, my phone was ringing. "Dave, it's Pete. You need to see the Downtown Business Facebook page." I pulled up Facebook on my laptop and found the post. Someone had shared my email, complete with photos and screenshots. The comments section was exploding with reactions, everything from shock to disgust to people claiming they'd suspected something all along. "Holy crap," one comment read. "I knew there was something going on between those two. They were way too friendly at the Chamber of Commerce mixer." "This is disgusting," wrote another. "I'll never set foot in Murphy's bar again. Eddie Russo is a sleazebag. I'm canceling my gym membership tomorrow." The post had been shared 47 times in 6 hours. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Dave Grady?" The voice was male, unfamiliar, and angry. "Who's asking?" "This is Eddie Russo. We need to talk." "I don't think we have anything to talk about, Eddie." "You know perfectly well we do. Meet me at the gym in an hour, or I'm coming to your house." He hung up before I could respond. I called Pete. "Eddie wants to meet. Says he's coming to my house if I don't show up at the gym." "Don't go to the gym," Pete said immediately. "That's his territory, his advantage. If he wants to talk, make him come to you." "What if he actually shows up here?" "Then you'll be ready for him." Pete was right. I'd started this game, and I needed to be prepared to finish it. Eddie was bigger and stronger, but I was smarter and more motivated. Plus, I had the home field advantage. I spent the next hour preparing for a confrontation I hoped wouldn't happen, but knew was inevitable. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. Through the peephole, I could see Eddie standing on my front porch wearing jeans and a tight t-shirt that showed off his muscles. He looked angry, but also nervous, probably not used to being on the defensive. I opened the door, but left the chain lock engaged. "What do you want, Eddie?" "I want to know why you're trying to destroy my business." "I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm just sharing information. Those photos, those messages, you stole them from Carla's phone. I found them on a phone in my house. Big difference." He pushed against the door, testing the chain lock. "Open the door, Dave. Let's settle this like men. We're settling it right now. You want to screw my wife, that's between you and her. But you made it my business when you started talking about me like I was some kind of joke. Carla said you were pathetic, and she was right. What kind of man hides behind anonymous emails instead of facing his problems? The kind of man who's smart enough not to get into fistfights with steroid cases." Eddie's face turned red. "Open this door, or I'll kick it down." "Go ahead. I've got security cameras recording everything, and I've already called the police. You want to add breaking and entering to your list of problems?" That was a lie about the police, but Eddie didn't know that. He stood there for a moment, breathing hard, probably trying to decide if I was bluffing. Finally, he stepped back from the door. "This isn't over, Dave." "Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet." He walked back to his car, but turned around before getting in. "You think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Carla's not the innocent victim you think she is." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Ask her about the money, Dave. Ask her where all that cash from the bar register has been going." He got in his car and drove away, leaving me standing in my doorway with a dozen new questions and the uncomfortable feeling that this game was more complicated than I'd realized. I called Carla's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Tried the bar, but whoever answered said she'd left early. She came home an hour later, looking like she'd been crying. "We need to talk," I said. "I know," she replied. "I know about everything." But as I was about to discover, she didn't know about everything. Not even close. The real game was just getting started. Carla sat at our kitchen table, hands folded, looking like a defendant waiting for sentencing. The confident, flirty woman who managed Murphy's bar had been replaced by someone who looked smaller, defeated, caught. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About Eddie? Couple of weeks. About the money he mentioned? About 5 minutes." Her face went pale. "He told you about the money?" "Just that I should ask you about it, so I'm asking." She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands like they might provide answers. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "It started small, Just $20 or $30 here and there from the register, tips that I didn't report, cash sales that I forgot to ring up. How much, Carla? Over the past year? Maybe $3,000? $3,000. Not enough to retire on, but enough to get fired, prosecuted, and banned from working in any business that handled money. Why? Because I felt trapped. Her voice got stronger, more defensive. Because I felt like we were going nowhere, like I was stuck in this life with no way out. The money made me feel like I had some control, some freedom. And Eddie? Eddie made me feel wanted, desired, like I was worth something more than just paying bills and watching TV every night. I sat down across from her, trying to process the fact that my wife was not just an adulteress, but also a thief. So what now? I asked. I don't know. Eddie's furious about the Facebook thing. He's talking about suing people, hiring lawyers. His gym membership is down 30% since yesterday. Good. Dave, you don't understand. Eddie's not just some gym owner. He's got connections, friends who don't like being embarrassed. What kind of connections? The kind that make problems go away. A chill ran down my spine. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. Eddie's not the kind of guy who just accepts defeat and moves on. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Pete's number. Dave, where are you right now? Home. Why? Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm coming over. What's going on? I'll explain when I get there. Just stay inside. Pete arrived 20 minutes later looking grim and carrying a manila folder. We need to talk, he said, glancing at Carla. Privately. Carla went upstairs, leaving Pete and me alone in the kitchen. Your friend Eddie has some interesting business associates, Pete said, opening the folder. I made some calls to my old contacts at the police department. Russo's gym has been under investigation for money laundering. Money laundering? Eddie's been washing cash for some local pills dealers. The gym membership fees, personal training payments, supplement sales, all ways to turn dirty money clean. Pete pulled out a police report. 3 months ago, they raided the gym, but Eddie got tipped off. Everything was clean by the time they showed up. What does this have to do with me? Eddie thinks you're working with the cops. The Facebook thing, the anonymous emails, the timing right after the failed raid. He thinks you're an undercover informant trying to destroy his operation. My stomach dropped. That's insane. Insane or not, that's what he believes. And if he's right about having dangerous friends, you could be in real trouble. I looked at the police report, trying to understand how my simple revenge plan had turned into something that might get me ended. There's more, Pete said. I did some digging on your wife's financial situation. The money she's been stealing from Murphy's, it's not going into her personal account. Where's it going? Eddie's been using her to help launder money through the bar. Small amounts spread out over time mixed in with legitimate cash transactions. She's not just stealing from her employer, she's helping criminals clean pills money. The room started spinning. My cheating wife wasn't just having an affair and stealing from her job. She was part of a money laundering operation that involved dangerous people who thought I was an undercover cop. Pete, what the heck have I gotten myself into? Something way bigger than you intended. The question now is how to get you out of it. Before Pete could answer, we heard a car door slam outside, then another and another. Pete moved to the window and looked out through the blinds. Dave, how many people know you're home right now? Just you and Carla. Why? Because there are 4 guys getting out of a black SUV in your driveway, and they don't look like they're here to sell magazine subscriptions. My phone rang. Eddie's number. Answer it, Pete whispered. Put it on speaker. Hello, Eddie. Dave, you've got about 30 seconds to come outside before my friends come inside to get you. I don't know what you think I've done, but cut the crap. We know you're working with the cops. We know you've been gathering information on my business. The question is whether you want to discuss this like civilized people or whether you want to make this difficult. Pete was already on his phone, presumably calling emergency. Eddie, I'm not working with any cops. I'm just a guy who found out his wife was cheating. Right. And it's just a coincidence that you started harassing me right after the police raid on my gym. What police raid? Don't play dumb, Dave. It doesn't suit you. Through the window, I could see 4 large men walking toward my front door. They moved like people who were comfortable with violence, confident in their ability to handle whatever resistance they might encounter. Police are on the way, Pete whispered. Eddie, I swear to you, I have no idea what you're talking about. I found messages on my wife's phone. I got angry. I wanted to embarrass you. That's it. Then you won't mind coming outside to discuss this face to face. The front door exploded inward. Pete grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back of the house. Move! We ran through the kitchen as heavy footsteps thundered through the living room. Pete yanked open the back door and we stumbled into the backyard just as sirens began wailing in the distance. This way, Pete said, leading me toward the neighbor's fence. Behind us, I could hear voices in my house, men searching rooms, calling out to each other. Then I heard Carla screaming. We have to go back, I said. They've got Carla. Dave, we can't. I'm not leaving her with those guys. I turned around and ran back toward the house, Pete cursing behind me as he followed. Through the kitchen window, I could see one of Eddie's friends holding Carla by the arm while another man searched through drawers. She looked terrified, tears streaming down her face. The sirens were getting closer. Police! Someone shouted from the front of the house. Everyone on the ground! The men in my kitchen looked at each other, made a quick decision, and ran toward the back door. Pete and I pressed ourselves against the side of the house as they rushed past us and disappeared into the neighbor's yard. By the time the police finished taking statements and processing the scene, it was nearly midnight. My front door was destroyed, my house had been searched by criminals, and my wife was in the hospital being treated for shock and minor injuries. Pete and I sat in my wrecked living room, drinking coffee and trying to make sense of what had happened. This is way beyond revenge now, Pete said. These people think you're a threat to their operation. So what do? You have two choices. You can disappear, leave town, start over somewhere else, or you can finish what you started. What do you mean, finish it? Pete smiled grimly. I mean, we give Eddie and his friends exactly what they're afraid of. We make sure they go to prison before they have another chance to come after you. How? We become the informants they think we already are. I looked around my destroyed house, thought about Carla in the hospital, considered the fact that I'd started this whole thing just because I wanted to embarrass my cheating wife. Pete, I think I'm in way over my head. Maybe, but it's too late to turn back now. These guys won't stop until they're convinced you're not a threat. The only way to make that happen is to actually become the threat they're afraid of. He was right. I'd wanted revenge, and I'd gotten it. But now revenge wanted me back, and it was bigger, meaner, and more dangerous than anything I'd imagined. The game had changed completely. The question was whether I was smart enough to win it. Outside, Eddie's black SUV drove slowly past my house, and I knew the answer to that question was going to determine whether I lived long enough to regret starting this whole mess. The joke wasn't funny anymore. 3 days later, I was sitting in a federal building downtown, wearing a wire and trying not to sweat through my shirt. The FBI agents across from me looked like they'd stepped out of a recruitment poster, clean-cut, serious, and completely unimpressed by my story. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Agent Sarah Martinez said, reviewing her notes. You started harassing Eddie Russo because he was having an affair with your wife. You had no knowledge of his money laundering operation or his connection to pills trafficking. That's right. But now you want to help us build a case against him. Now I want to stay alive long enough to testify against him. Agent Martinez exchanged glances with her partner, Agent Thompson. They'd been investigating Eddie for 6 months without making much progress. My accidental involvement had given them the opportunity they needed. The plan is simple, Thompson explained. You're going to call Eddie and arrange a meeting. Tell him you want to make a deal, that you're willing to keep quiet about his business in exchange for him leaving you alone. And then you're going to get him to talk about the money laundering, get him to admit to criminal activity while wearing this wire. Martinez held up a device that looked like a small button. State of the art, audio and video recording, GPS tracking, panic button if things go wrong. What if he searches me? He won't. Guys like Eddie are arrogant. They think they're smarter than everyone else. He'll want to gloat, to explain how powerless you are compared to him. I hoped they were right, because if they were wrong, I'd be dead before backup could arrive. The meeting was set for that evening at Eddie's gym. After hours, just the two of us, supposedly so we could work out our differences like civilized adults. Pete drove me to the gym, parked across the street where he could watch the entrance. You sure about this? He asked. No, but I'm sure about what happens if I don't do it. If things go bad, don't try to be a hero. Just get out. Thanks for the pep talk. Eddie was waiting for me in the main workout area, surrounded by weight machines and mirrors. He looked relaxed, confident, like a man who held all the cards. Dave, thanks for coming. Thanks for not bringing your friends this time. He smiled. That was unfortunate. But you have to understand, I thought you were working with the police. And now? Now I think you're just a guy who got in over his head. The question is whether you're smart enough to get yourself out. I activated the recording device in my pocket. I'm listening. Here's the situation, Dave. I run a business, several businesses actually. Some of them are more complicated than others, and they require a certain level of discretion from people who might accidentally learn about them. Such as husbands who start investigating their wives and discover information they weren't meant to find. Eddie walked over to a weight bench and sat down, completely at ease. Carla's been very helpful to me, Dave. Not just personally, but professionally. She's got access to cash transactions at the bar. She understands how to handle money in ways that don't attract attention. You mean she's been laundering money for you? I mean, she's been helping me manage my various income streams. There's a difference. Not to the IRS, there isn't. Eddie laughed. The IRS is the least of your worries right now, Dave. See, the people I work with don't like complications. They don't like attention. And they really don't like the possibility that someone might share information about their business arrangements with law enforcement. I already told you I'm not working with the police. Maybe not yet. But what happens when they come asking questions? What happens when they offer you immunity in exchange for testimony? He stood up and walked closer to me. That's why we need to reach an understanding. What kind of understanding? The kind where you forget everything you think you know about my business. The kind where you and Carla get divorced quietly without any messy legal proceedings that might require financial disclosure. The kind where you move somewhere far away and start a new life. And if I don't agree to that understanding, Eddie's smile disappeared. Then my friends and I will have to solve this problem in a more permanent way. You're threatening to end me. I'm explaining the consequences of not being reasonable. The Wire was getting everything. Eddie's admission of money laundering, his threats, his connection to dangerous associates. The FBI would have enough evidence to arrest him and probably flip him against his pills dealer partners. But first, I had to get out of the gym alive. I need some time to think about this, I said. You have until tomorrow night. After that, the offer expires. And Carla? Carla's already made her choice. She's been working with me for over a year, Dave. This isn't some romantic affair that got out of hand. She's been a willing participant in everything we've done. That hit harder than I expected. Not just the cheating, but the calculated deception. The year-long betrayal that went far beyond love. I should go, I said. Dave. Eddie's voice stopped me at the door. Don't make this more complicated than it needs to be. You started this game, but you're not smart enough to finish it. I walked out of the gym, crossed the street to Pete's car, and collapsed into the passenger seat. How'd it go? Pete asked. I got everything they need. Good. Now, let's get you somewhere safe. But as Pete started the car, my phone rang. Agent Martinez. Dave, we've got a problem. Eddie's not at the gym anymore. What do you mean? I just left him there. Our surveillance team says he left right after you did. He's in the wind. My blood turned cold. What about Carla? We're sending units to the hospital now. Pete was already driving toward the hospital, pushing his old car as fast as it would go. We arrived to find police cars in the parking lot and FBI agents in the lobby. Agent Thompson met us at the elevator. She's gone, Dave. Checked herself out an hour ago, said her husband was coming to pick her up. I didn't pick her up. We know. We think Eddie took her. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Want to see your wife again? Pier 47, Warehouse District. Come alone, or she disappears permanently. They want a trade, I told the agents. It's a trap, Martinez said. Eddie knows you're working with us now. He's going to end both of you. Maybe, but if I don't show up, he'll definitely end Carla. Thompson shook his head. We can't let you go in there alone. You won't be letting me do anything. I'm going whether you approve or not. An hour later, I was walking through the warehouse district, wearing a heavier wire and followed by a dozen federal agents I couldn't see but hoped were there. Pier 47 was an abandoned loading dock surrounded by empty buildings and broken streetlights. Eddie's black SUV was parked near the water, engine running. Eddie stepped out of the shadows, holding Carla by the arm. Even from 50 feet away, I could see that she was scared, hurt, probably sedated. That's close enough, Dave. Let her go, Eddie. This is between us. No, it's between all of us. See, Carla here has been telling me some interesting things about your recent activities, About your new friends in law enforcement. He pulled Carla closer to the edge of the pier. The question is whether you care enough about your cheating, lying, criminal wife to die for her. Eddie, you don't have to do this. You can still walk away. Walk away? Dave, you destroyed my business, turned my customers against me, made me look like a fool in front of people whose respect I need to stay alive. So what now? You end us both and hope that solves your problems? Now I send a message to the FBI, to my business partners, to anyone else who thinks they can mess with Eddie Russo. He pulled out a tool, pointed it at Carla's head. Any last words, Dave? Yeah, duck. The sniper's bullet hit Eddie in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending the tool flying into the water. FBI agents emerged from every shadow, surrounding the pier with tools drawn and spotlights blazing. Eddie collapsed, injured and cursing, as Agent Martinez cuffed him. Carla ran to me, sobbing, clinging like I was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly become very unstable. It's over, I told her. It's finally over. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. Eddie would go to prison. His money laundering operation would be shut down and the immediate danger would pass. But Carla and I were finished. Too much had happened. Too many lies had been told. Too much trust had been broken. 3 months later, the divorce was final. Carla pled guilty to money laundering charges and got 2 years probation in exchange for her testimony against Eddie and his associates. She moved to another state, started over with a new name and a new life. Eddie got 15 years in federal prison. His gym was seized by the government, his assets frozen, his reputation destroyed. I kept my job, kept my house, and tried to rebuild a life that made sense without the constant presence of betrayal and revenge. Pete and I still meet for coffee every morning. We don't talk about Eddie or Carla or the 3 weeks when my life turned into a crime thriller. We talk about baseball and politics and the weather, normal things that normal people discuss when they're not wearing wires or dodging criminals. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just confronted Carla directly, if I'd chosen divorce over revenge, if I'd been satisfied with being the victim instead of trying to become the victor. But then I remember the look on Eddie's face when the FBI agents surrounded him, the moment when he realized that the pathetic, stupid husband he'd been laughing about had outmaneuvered him completely. I remember that moment and I smile, because sometimes the joke really is on the other guy.